Today I'm going to show you how to make a leather stamp. And to start with, I'm going to show you my handmade leather phone case. Looks like this on the outside and this on the inside. And here you can see a small relief of my logo. And I made this with a stamp that I printed out from my 3D printer. And yeah, I'm very happy with this. I get a lot of compliments on it. So I'm going to kind of tell you the things I learned while I was trying this out. And let's go through this together. And I think you can make just as nice things yourself.
So, as usual, we're going to start in the CAD, and this is Fusion 360. Check out the linked channel if you want some good tutorials for beginner. I'm going to run through this, assuming you actually know a little bit about CAD already. So, when doing a leather stamp, there are some tips and tricks you need to think of, and I'm going to try and go through them all very, simple. So what I usually do is I start making a sketch here, and this is where we are going to make our design. I'm going to make some text because that is simple, and let's do that. Just put it somewhere. Let's write good boy. Now here is where you also put in the height. I think 10 millimeter is okay. Let's make it bold. And this is where we have the first design tip. You can't really do too fine details because a leather doesn't really want to bend in extreme tight radiuses, and also a 3D printer, if you use a FDM 3D printer and not a resin printer, you have the resolution to think about. I will get into that later on, but it has a little bit to do with what kind of size nozzle you have. But I think that 10 millimeter high, letters like this, bold, capital, is going to work fine. So we have the text, and we are going to just extrude that like this. And this is kind of where we get the next thing, because the height here, you don't want it to be too little. It's easy to say that, oh well, if I don't make it too high, it's going to be more rigid. That may be true, but if it's too close to the kind of back plate, when you push it down into the leather, you're going to experience that the back plate also gets, pushed into the leather from the sides, probably. So I think that 5 millimeter is on the low side. I'm going to make this 10 millimeter, and it sounds high, but bear with me. So there we go. Now we need a backing, and we're just going to make that bigger than the design by about this much, and we're going to extrude that to the other way. And yeah, I think that 5 millimeter is okay. Actually, I'm going to bring this down a bit. This looks better. So what we want is for only these parts here to touch the leather, and you don't want these parts to do it. And that's it, really. And we're going to have to mirror this. I'm going to do that in the slicer. You could have done it in the CAD as well. I think the slicer has a very simple feature to do it, so let's do it there. Let's be lazy.
So when we get to the printer and we want to print our stamp, we're going to have to, well, perhaps not have to, but I like to use a smaller nozzle diameter. And I've got this set of 4 different ones. It starts with a 0.2 millimeter, goes all the way up to 0.8 millimeter nozzle. And the standard for most 3D printers is 0.4. So when you lower that down to 0.2, you get a, much smaller radiuses. You can do finer details. And I think for these small leather prints, it really is a good improvement and a good investment.
We are in the slicer. I'm using Cura here. The first thing you need to do when you have changed the nozzle is of course to change the line width. I usually run a 0.6 millimeter nozzle for speed when accuracy is not as important. So now we are just going to change that to 0.2. The layer height will be at 0.1, roughly half the nozzle size is good. That usually works. And what we're going to do as well here is make sure we have a big wall line count. That is very helpful. We're also going to make sure that we have lots of layers to make it more rigid. Let's go into this mode here and have a look-see. And you see that, well, right now it's hollow, but you see that it has a lot of walls here, and that gives a lot of rigidity. We are also going to up the infill density to about 50%, I think is good. So here you can see that we will have a lot of support internally when I press down on this, and that is very, very important. So here we can see how it's going to be built up, and yeah, I think this will work pretty good actually. And of course the most important thing to do here, unless you did it in the CAD, is to mirror it sideways, because when you transfer this to the leather, it's going to be mirrored again and look right. So what I like to do here is just take the mirror, and push that, and there we go.
Okay, so we have our stamp. It's looking pretty good. Only thing is that the face here has these marks from the print nozzle moving on here. And you know that everything that's on here is going to be transferred over to the leather. So we really don't want to see those lines and those small marks. So what we're going to do is we're going to take some, I think this is 180 grit, and just sand it down a little bit. Make sure it's flat. And yeah, there we go. Easy as that. And this is actually going to give the imprinted part a bit of a satin finish. You can of course go up and make this really good. You can, apply some paint if you want to have some sheen to the relief. It's up to you. So next here is to actually get some leather and make the print. Now leather is somewhat of a rabbit hole to really fall down into, because there is a lot of different kinds of leather, and some will take this imprint better than others. Some will not do it at all. Some needs to be wetted down with just regular water to be able to accept better. However, some kinds of leathers can stain from water. My advice to you is to try it out on a smaller piece of leather before you go on to the real thing, because messing up a nice piece of leather when you've done a lot of hand work to it is not fun. Trust me, I've been there. I don't want that to happen to you. The common way of putting a stamp onto a leather is by using a press. Most of the time maybe a hand press called arbor press that really churns out several tons of power onto this leather piece. And I don't know about you, but I don't have one of those in my kitchen. So I've come up with another solution that actually works, and it looks like this. This is a regular clamp. I bought this, I don't know, it's a cheap one, but it really works. And I'm gonna show you how right now. I have taken another piece of kind of leather here that I know is a little bit better because the first try didn't go so well. So what you do is you take another piece of leather first, and then you take the piece you really want to do, and then you take your stamp and you just put it down where you want it to go. And then you take your clamp, try to put it in the middle, and you clamp it down hard, because this is instead of a several ton press, you need to really push it down. And when you have it taut, you can wiggle it around a little bit to really try to get the force to be distributed evenly. And if your stamp is bigger than the press, you could either take a metal plate that's the same correct size to transfer the load and the force, or you can do like I'm doing now and do it twice, and then voila! I'm pretty happy with this. It turns out well. Like I said, the first didn't really go as well. If I remember correctly, this is the kind of leather that benefits from being wet. I don't want it to do it wet now because it's a little bit of a mess, but this leather has taken it a lot better.